Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, and a good Tuesday morning. The sun did come up today. Everybody's still a little bummed over the weekend and about the game on Sunday. We welcome you, as always, to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman. As you probably know, but some may not, we come your way 10 to noon Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We always ask, please, if you're able to subscribe to the program. And we also stream on Facebook. That's the Chatterbox Sports page. Flip the notification switch on if you can. If you prefer to join us in podcast form, so be it. Search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. Zach Taylor was clearly still stung by Sunday's AFC Championship loss to Kansas City, but he was very upbeat yesterday. I went back and watched the entire thing. He was upbeat about the just completed season, the 10-game win streak, and especially about the future of the team and the franchise. He noted he started exit interviews with players. Those will continue today, and it's something he regularly does at the end of every season, but especially for those players with pending free agency. He wouldn't get into any specifics as to who might stay, who might go, but that those decisions are already on the front burner. Meanwhile, linebacker Jermaine Pratt expressed contrition for his reaction to Joseph Osai's penalty. That video went viral after Sunday's loss. He said a man has to admit when he's made a mistake and when he's wrong. He said he was wrong and wasn't a good teammate in that moment. He added that he wants to be back with the Bengals next year. He's a free agent. The NFL's salary cap will be a record $224.8 million per club next season. That's nearly $17 million more from this year and almost $43 million more per team than the COVID season of 2021. Kellen Moore was let go as offensive coordinator 2 days ago in Dallas, but never hit the unemployment line. He was swooped up immediately for that same position for the LA Chargers. Apparently, he's good enough for Justin Herbert, but not Dak Prescott. Maybe it's just not good enough for Jerry Jones. College hoops, UC and Xavier back at it tomorrow. UC at home against Tulsa. The Muskies are hosting Providence. Those two teams, along with Marquette, share the lead atop the Big East Conference standings. Last night, a big one deep in the heart of Texas. Number 11 Baylor traveled down to number 10 Austin, and the Longhorns come away with a 5-point win to go to 18-4 on the year. Texas leads the powerful Big 12 Conference by half a game over Kansas State, who takes on Kansas in Lawrence tonight. And, of course, our entire office, it seems like, will be at that game tonight in Lawrence. Also tonight, Dayton hosts Loyola Chicago, Miami hosts Toledo, and Ohio University plays at Eastern Michigan. All right, lots in the chat already today. And the first thing, fellas, everybody's talking about, Paul, you pointed it out to me. Welcome back, Paul Fritzner, and welcome back, Brandon Singo.
Yay, we made it. Woo!
How was your trip to Kansas City?
It was a fun trip, not a fun ending. Still just kind of soaking it in and figuring out what the hell happened there. But it was a good time. Fun game. I have some passionate thoughts about the Bengals.
All right, well, we're going to get into them because we have Paul Doherty coming up, and that's not till 11. And then Tracy Jones, of course, as he joins us every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30. I want to start with the main topic in the chat right out of the gate. Paul, you brought this to my attention today. I did not see it. Apparently, Gene Steratore, the former head of officials in the National Football League, he traded in that job to become the analyst for the number one team with CBS. He was in the booth for Sunday's game and apparently has done some kind of interview today talking about at least one, if not more, of the calls. Paul Fritzner.
Yeah, he did. He went on the air. He went on a podcast. I don't know what podcast it was. I hadn't heard of it, but he went on to a podcast. I think it was Maggie and Perloff is what it looks like. It's a CBS Sports radio show. And he talked about the last play of the game, and he basically, in his eyes, confirmed that there was a hold all over the place. The one he talked about was B.J. Hill, but there were holds all over the place on that last play. And part of me really hates hearing this because the game's already over. I don't even want to know. There's nothing that this helps except maybe making yourself feel better that you're going back and realizing that, they did make a mistake. My eyes didn't lie to me. I'm not seeing things. But I hate hearing this personally. I don't need to know that the refs made a mistake and potentially cost the Bengals a game. I don't need to know that. That's just me, though.
It's one of those debates, and Paul, your experience certainly in basketball, you hear this all the time about officials swallowing the whistle in the final minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it might be, that fouls up until that point in time that are called are frequently not called. Now, let's be honest about it. How you feel about that strictly comes down to how you feel about which team's on the field and who you're rooting for, right? So like in basketball, if all of a sudden during the entire game some guy takes a jump shot on the wing and he gets tapped on the elbow with 10 seconds left in the game, if you're the team with the guy that's shooting, you want the foul to be called, right? If you're the defender there, you're like, okay, the officials swallow the whistle. I've always been of the opinion if it's a foul in the first minute, it's a foul in the last minute. But it doesn't seem like that's normally the case in a lot of these games. And I just don't know how, with the frequency that we see of holding in the National Football League, and look, there are people that'll tell you, we've all heard this before, there are people that'll tell you that if you wanted to call holding on every single play, you probably could.
Right.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to arguably the most important play of the game, and the most important play of the game could come with 7 minutes left. But in this case, it's down under a minute. And I just don't know how you miss. Apparently, there was more than one, according to a lot of Bengals fans. It was not only B.J. Hill, but they felt that Trey Hendrickson was held on the play as well. And I don't know how you miss one, if not two, on the same play.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. And to your point about swallowing the whistle, a lot of times when you get to the end of a game, you just think to yourself, like you said, if it's a foul in the first minute, is it a foul at the end of the game? Well, I don't know. But if it's not egregious, don't call it. But if it is and it's clear and obvious, you got to make the call. And it seemed like there was not one, maybe not two, but maybe three of those on the last play. But Brandon, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it should not have come down to that. You have the ball tied at 20 3 times in the fourth quarter. Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense had every chance to win the game. And that's, as biased as I am, that's what it comes down to. You want Joe Burrow to have the ball in his hands. I will admit, like everyone else, the refs had a bad day, but you cannot put the game on the officiating. The Bengals still had a chance. And I'm not going to knock Joseph Osai. That's a heat of the moment. Trying to make a hustle play.
Yep.
Touches him out of bounds. I feel terrible seeing those shots of him after the game. And I love B.J. Hill doing that post-game presser with him, answering the questions and defending his teammate. But the Bengals made mistakes. And the Bengals had chances to win the game. And that's what stinks. Because they had real shots to win this game. It was tied at 20. They had the ball 3 times in the final 10 minutes and couldn't score.
Well, there's a lot to dissect here. Let's start with this. Because, we got into some of the officiating. We got into the play calling there yesterday, which I just still, you go back and watch it again, and you're just like, I don't get it. The 2nd and 3, trying to throw the ball 25 yards down the field. 3rd and 3, 40 yards down the field. Your chances of completing that pass are less than 5%. And they already used up one of those earlier in the game on that bomb to chase inside the 5. And then the punt, right? We got into a lot of that yesterday. But, the bottom line is if you broke it all down and you said, okay, if there was one single reason or one single thing that you could point to that was the difference in that game between winning and losing, It comes down to the fact that of the final 4 teams that were playing this weekend, okay, Philly, San Francisco, Kansas City, and the Bengals. The Bengals were the only team still standing that does not have a dominant pass rushing player. Now, whether that comes from the interior like Chris Jones or on the outside like you see with Philly and San Francisco, they don't have it. Now, Hendrickson was really good his first 2 years here. I know he played through a broken wrist, but he was a non-factor during the entire playoff run. He had no influence on the game whatsoever. None. And that's unacceptable. Sam Hubbard is not known as a pass rushing defender. He'll pick up a handful of sacks over the course of the year, but he does a lot of other things very well. That's not his forte. Reeder is a presence in the middle, especially in the run game. Osai looks like he has a chance to develop into that kind of a player, and they're hoping some of the other younger guys do. But when you just look at that and you say to yourself, if there's an area of need in this team, and we'll get into a lot of these things moving forward over the next number of weeks as we lead up to the draft, free agency, who comes and who goes, they don't have it. So you say to yourself, okay, do you go out and spend a ton of money if there is somebody out there that's a dynamic, dominant, and you're going to pay through the nose if you do it? But they were $44 million under the cap looking ahead right now to next season. Do you go out and get a dominant pass rushing defensive lineman / linebacker, or are you going to have to repatch that offensive line again? You know you're going to have Karras back. You know you're going to have Kappa back. You know you're going to have Volson back. You know that Carmen and Adeniji are going to be back. I'm not so sure about Lyle Collins. I mean, that's a long recovery from a torn ACL, and he did it very late in the year. Now, a lot of these guys are coming back in record time, but for a man that weighs 300 and something pounds, that's a bigger challenge than a guy who weighs 180. So if you guys were sitting at the Bengals offices right now, and we're going to get into a lot of this kind of stuff about, Burrow's contract, and much is made of that. But if you had to go out and spend on either one, if it was an either-or proposition, maybe they can do both, maybe they can do neither. But if you had to go do one or the other, what would you do? Because you're not going to get that guy, more than likely, could be wrong, you're not going to get that guy in the first round of the draft, considering where they're going to be drafted.
I'm going to say offensive line, because I don't care how much depth you had. You saw that if there's no injuries to that offensive line, I truly believe the Bengals win that game. I mean, we've seen it. If you look back at the Super Bowl, that final play, Jalen Ramsey fell down, Burrow's getting rocked. We knew the offensive line was bad last year, but then the offensive line this year, in this game I should say, dinged up, playing the best they can, but that's the constant. The offensive line. I mean, I think the Bengals are fine on defense. Fine on defense. You always take an improvement if you can get it, but I think, would you like more sacks or more pressure? Yeah, I was saying that the whole first half as Mahomes was able to get away from everything with a bummed ankle, or supposed to be a bummed ankle. But I think Hubbard, Hendrickson, Reeder, and the depth they have there is good enough. I'm more worried about Burrow having a chance to win the game and having time to throw the ball.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough spot when you can't give your best player, when you can't give the guy that you're going to pay all the money to, when you can't give your dynamic playmaker the ability to make plays. And that's what Burrow's been lacking. He just doesn't have the time to go out there and do what the Bengals drafted him to do, and that's to go out there and win you a ball game, and you couldn't do that on Sunday because he didn't have the time to do it. And the sacks went down in the second half because they changed things up and tried to figure it out, tried to make peace with it in the second half. But even still, I saw it last night on Twitter. It's crazy. Between last year and the Super Bowl and the sack on Sunday night, both sacks happened with 39 seconds left in the game. Both sacks happened in the exact same spot in the game. 39 seconds to go in the game. Both sacks to essentially end the Bengals season happen at the same point. Not just the way they happen, but even at the same time of the game. It's just brutal.
Look, I get the offensive line thing. I think you've got clearly some depth there. You know, Collins, it's hard to imagine he's going to come back. I could be totally wrong on that. But they're going to take some kind of a hit on the cap if they release him. It might be minimal, but it's going to be something because he was signed to longer than a one-year deal. Now, Jonah Williams, he's going to come back. Would you move him over to right tackle? Would you take your chances with Carman being a permanent left tackle? Now, to be fair, Chris Jones, and we talked about it last week, before Sunday's game, he had played in 14 postseason games and never had a single sack, not one. And that includes 3 games against the Bengals, 2 of which were against that offensive line last year that had a hard time protecting Joe Burrow. Miserable time. But Jones didn't get to him, and he didn't get to him when they had a healthy offensive line when they met during the regular season. So you can make the argument that that group that was here before all the injuries, if you brought them back intact, that was the group you felt was going to be very strong at the beginning of the year. And once they got going after those first 2 games, they proved to be a solid offensive line. Maybe not the best in the league, but they were very good protecting Burrow for a long, long time. But the question is, are you confident keeping Williams at left tackle? If you're not, would you move him to right tackle? And are you confident that Jackson Carman can develop into the left tackle that played at Clemson and that played very well in the game against Buffalo? Or are you going to go get a free agent again?
I do want to say quickly before we keep going on this point that I want to say thanks to Rowdy Everpoint for the $10 super chat. He says that Burrow had a 123.6 passer rating when he targeted T when T was lined up out wide in 2022. On the web, other teams' fans were salivating at the chance to trade for T. The thought of letting him go is insane. I don't think the issue with the Bengals is on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to bring pretty much everybody back on the offensive side. It's developing the offensive line, getting the depth, making sure that Joe Burrow has the time to be able to go out and throw the ball, which he will if the guys get healthy again. They have the personnel there to be able to do it, but can the offensive line get healthy? And then at the same time, defensively, how much are you going to keep together from this defense that played so well over the last 2 years? I mean, these guys were one of the best defenses in the NFL when it mattered. How many guys are you going to lose? How do you prioritize? Who do you need back? Who do you not? Who do you let go? That's everything you're looking at right now.
There is a fascinating article today, and a guy does a great job in The Athletic, Paul Dehner Jr. And for those that are, really curious, and all of a sudden, since the Bengals have lost, everybody is starting to focus in on the Burrow contract and what that would mean and how it could affect the Bengals moving forward. It is an unbelievable article. It lays it all out there, and it really zeroes in on a couple of things. The Bengals want to get this contract done this offseason. Okay, they want to get it done. But the way it's going to be structured, and this goes back to the comments made by the general manager in Buffalo, where he talked about how, the Bengals were playing with rookie contracts to 2 of their brightest stars in Burrow and Chase, their 2 best players. And he talked about how it's going to change for the Bengals and how it would change for Buffalo when the contracts of the quarterback and the contract of the wide receiver, in their case, Stephon Diggs, quarterback Josh Allen. So 2 years ago, when they signed Allen to this long-term deal, his cap hit was at $10 million. Last year, it went to $16 million. This year, it jumped to $39 million. Okay? And basically, Diggs was in the same category. Huge jump this year. So the point was made by Paul Dehner Jr. that if the Bengals get this contract done, okay, you're basically not going to be hurt on this big dollar amount for at least 3 more years, because the way they'll structure the contract, and there are many different ways this contract could go. Patrick Mahomes took the most interesting contract of any of them because he got a 10-year deal and he backloaded so much of it along with the guaranteed money that for a guy that's making, and is the kind of player that he is, he's the best player in the league. It's really interesting on how they structured that deal. Now, 10 years is a long time. But Mahomes is only 27. And we've seen Brady play into darn near his mid-40s. But anyway, back to Burrow. They were saying that, he was saying that, Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic, that this should really not affect the team dramatically for at least 3 more years. So when we hear so much about this window and who can hang around and who cannot hang around, you started the conversation by T. Higgins. Tim McGee said yesterday no player likes being franchise tagged. Well, that might be the way it goes for T. Higgins. That just might be the way it is. And it's a huge salary cap hit because you make, the average of the top 5 guys at your position. And Higgins may not be a top 5 receiver, but he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. And so, he then got into specifically of the big name players that are up for free agency this year. Hayden Hurst, Von Bell, Jesse Bates, Jermaine Pratt. And he put a percentage on the chances of each of those guys basically being back. Pratt, 35%. Jesse Bates, 10%, if not less. He's going to make a fortune from somebody else. They have his replacement, they think they do, in Hill. Von Bell, probability of return, 75%. A lot of people forget. Von Bell has been around seemingly forever. He's 28. 28. He enrolled early at Ohio State. He left a year early. And, number 1 pick by the Saints, and off he went. Eli Apple, probability of return, less than 4%. Hayden Hurst, 50-50 proposition. The Bengals are, without a doubt, over these next 2 years, not only on the field but off the field, this offseason might be the single most interesting franchise in the NFL for what they're going to do and how they're going to handle all this.
I don't think there's any doubt about it, because what other team is competing at the level that the Bengals are competing at right now that is going to present this many different topics and storylines and things to pay attention to? You look at the 49ers, and they have some quarterback questions, and the 49ers have been so close. I didn't realize last night until I saw a graphic just how close the 49ers have been so many times in the last decade and haven't gotten it done. It was, I felt bad for 49ers fans looking at it, how heartbreaking that was.
Never feel bad for 49ers fans in Cincinnati. Never do that. Right, Tom? Don't do that.
I got nothing against the 49ers.
I got nothing against the 49ers. I was looking at it last night, and I was thinking to myself, man, how many times have they been so close? You get to the NFC Championship, you get it to the Super Bowl, and they can't win. They can't win. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, the Bengals, right? They're going to get there. They're going to get there. They're going to get there. What are they going to do? What are these storylines going to be that we follow in this offseason? I was going through all these different teams, and teams have questions. Every team has questions. But for a team that's as young as the Bengals are, and for as many pieces that they got to figure out whether they're going to bring back or tag or do whatever, I think you're spot on, Tom. I don't know if there is a team in the league that is competing at this level. There are some lower-level teams that are building, that are having to make a lot of these decisions, but not that are competing for Super Bowls like the Bengals are.
I agree, and Joe Burrow said his career, his whole career is the window for the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. I'm not as smart as everyone that's working inside that Bengals front office or who's throughout the NFL, but if you look at this year to when they really have to start paying Burrow and it's going to affect that cap space, these next 2 to 3 years are the real window where you have all of this talent. And sure, other big name wide receivers you can draft down the road maybe that are a T. Higgins that fall to the second round, or you can get bigger picks down the road or picks that'll pan out, I should say. But I think this year, that's why I was so bummed. I think Bengals fans are so bummed because you have the roster right now is so good. On paper, they have a better roster than almost every team in the NFL.
But that's the problem, is I agree the roster, especially on the offensive side, and we said all year long the unsung hero on this team was the defense all year long. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a championship defense because they do not have the guy that can dominate an opposing offensive line. I mean, Trent Williams might be the best left tackle in the NFL. That guy was abused in that game against the 49ers. I mean, abused. And a lot of people were saying if the Bengals had won that game and Jackson Carman's lining up after what happened to Trent Williams, I mean, God bless Jackson Carman, he did fine. But I still don't, I think offensively, they've got to do something again with the offensive line, and that could be, moving the chairs, on the deck around a little bit, and that kind of thing. But I just don't think because of that defensive guy that they're missing. There's a reason why the top 2 sacking teams in the NFL are playing in the Super Bowl. There's a reason why. Philadelphia had 70. Kansas City had almost 60 sacks.
I agree with you, Tom. I think my point is that the Bengals, whatever piece they want to go get or pieces they need to get, this is their window. To win a championship, to at least win one, is the next 2 to 3 years. Because if you don't do it then, it's going to be even harder. You're still going to have Joe Burrow for the next however many years, decade, but you're going to start paying him.
You need to do about Mixon. You do the Reed Mouse. Let Mixon go and just keep drafting a second-round running back.
Well, P. Ryan's another guy that's on that free agency list, and that was a footnote in the article written in The Athletic by Paul Diener Jr. that they believe very much that P. Ryan will come back. This was that debate yesterday we had with Tim McGee, going back to his days as a player agent. And, P. Ryan proved at times this year that you could have him as your lead back. Now, whether he's good enough to do that over 17, 18 weeks, I don't know. He's never had the chance to be your primary lead running back. Mixon's a good player, really good player, and at times has been a great player for this team. They love P. Ryan's ability to pass block. But if you've got a better offensive line, do you need a running back who's a great pass blocker? Yeah, you'd like to have him around if you can afford him, and they believe that P. Ryan is very much affordable. But this is going to be, I would just love, not to put it on the air, not to talk about it on the air, no nothing. Wouldn't you just love to just sit around in those meetings, not say a word, just sit back when Mike Brown and Duke Tobin and Katie Blackburn and Troy Blackburn and Zach Taylor, whoever else is in that room, scouts, your cap guy, to figure all that stuff out and to just listen to what those conversations are like. The one guy I'm surprised he gets, that's a wrong word. The one guy, and we've had some people allude to it in the chat, and I said about it yesterday, I think Logan Wilson's a good player. Mm-hmm. There's no way for me he's a foundation player. He's a good player. But, I'm not overspending on a linebacker unless it's Luke Kuechly. And last time I checked, he's not playing anymore. Or Roquan Smith. Does Logan Wilson make a difference in a game like Roquan Smith does? No, he does not.
I got a question for you, Tom. Do you think the Bengals do win a Super Bowl one day?
I do, because I think that this group and Duke Tobin. Well, look, on offense, you start on offense, and we've alluded to this a little bit already. They don't have to worry about anybody on offense, by and large, contractually, right now. There's no, like, superstar player on that team of the whole group. And the first 4 or 5 names that come to mind, right? Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon. None of those guys are free agents. None of them. So you're going to have to look at the defensive side of the ball and your offensive line. I believe, along with the player development, and this is a big thing that oftentimes gets overlooked in every sport. They had young players this year on that defensive side of the ball that started to emerge as the season went on. So I got to believe they're going to have some guys like Osai. Mm-hmm. Maybe he comes back and the guy's all over the field and gets 12 sacks next year. I don't know.
Right.
But he's got it in him, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I agree.
So I think they can win a Super Bowl? Absolutely, I think they can win a Super Bowl. Paul?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bengals will win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years. I really do. I think that the offense is too talented to not at least compete for one and put yourself in a position to win one. And I think the other thing, too, is that this year in this playoff run, to me, it really spoke to the growth of what this team needs right now, because I don't think there was a ton of talk when we talk about the trash talk and stuff like that. I don't really think there was a ton of talk from the Bengals. Some of it came from the mayor. A lot of it came from the fans. A lot of it came from the
mayor thing. Oh,
well, that was bad. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. A lot of it came from the periphery, but really it was Mike Hilton with the Burrowhead thing. And other than that, Joe was respectful, and there wasn't a ton, but from the Bengals going over to the Chiefs. And even I thought Chris Jones played it the best when I thought Chris Jones of the trash talk and the war of words and everything, I thought he handled it in spectacular fashion. The way he talked about, well, it's not a rivalry until you win one, and what do they call it, Burrowhead and all that. And then he comes into the press conference, drops one little subtle line, and walks out. I mean, he put on a masterclass of how to handle the whole situation. Chris Jones got the MVP on and off the field from that game on Sunday. But that's getting away from the point. My point is, I think that this game and this loss for the Bengals and this playoff run with how dominant they were over Buffalo, I think it gives the Bengals the confidence that right now they are the number 2 team in the AFC. I don't know if they're the number 2 team in the NFL. We'll maybe figure that out in a couple of weeks. But I think the Bengals right now feel confident in the fact that they are the number 2 team in the AFC. And if you're the number 2 team in the AFC, that means that you are putting yourself in a position to play this game at home. And I beat this like a drum yesterday on the show. But this game in the next 2 to 3 years has to be played at Paycor Stadium. It has to be at home. I'm not a huge home field advantage guy in the sense of the noise and everything else, but you are just asking so much of your team to have to go on the road to the loudest environment in the NFL year after year, 2 years in a row, to expect them to win this. And I know your starting quarterback had the ball with 2 minutes left and he couldn't get it done in a legacy drive. I get that. But you got to be able to set yourself up in a position where you get the number 1 seed, you play maybe a lesser team in your first game in divisional weekend, and then you get a home game at Paycor.
Well, that's what Kansas City got. I mean, Jacksonville gave them a game, but I mean, that was clearly a lesser team in the conference this year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you got to put yourself in that position, and that's where I'll be very interested to see how the Bengals handle the preseason, because God knows we spent enough time this year talking about the preseason and how the first 2 games of this season. Think about it. Clark Harris doesn't get hurt. This game's at home. If the Bengals go down and beat Dallas against Cooper Rush, this game is at home.
Yep.
Now, maybe the rest of the season, there's a butterfly effect. Maybe the rest of the season.
You want me to break some news to you and Tom right now? The offensive line will not play in the preseason next season.
Yeah, and see, I understand that, and I know where he's coming from, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where they're getting hurt in the preseason,
right,
and then all of a sudden they get hurt in the preseason after they rehab, and now all of a sudden you're back in the same spot where you were right now, where you need them down in the postseason run. I get it, but you have to put an emphasis. Now, here's the other thing. They may not have a choice about the preseason and the first 2 games of the season, because I think it was pretty clear this year, looking back at it now from a 30,000-foot view, that the first 2 games of the season, the Bengals were just hoping they won. It felt to me, looking back now and how they approached those games, It kind of feels like they looked at the Steelers and they said, well, the Steelers probably aren't going to be that good this year. And the Cowboys, I'm not trying to imply necessarily that they totally overlooked them, but what I'm saying is there is a chance that the Bengals go to the Chiefs in the season opening game next year. That the Bengals at Chiefs at Arrowhead is the Thursday night game in the first game of the NFL season next year.
That would blow my mind.
Or it's the first game of, it's maybe a primetime game on Sunday night. Paul Dehner Jr. and Jay talked about that on their podcast yesterday. I was listening to on the way home. If that is to happen, you're not overlooking that. You're approaching the entire preseason differently. That's not the Steelers. That's not the Browns without Deshaun Watson. That's the Chiefs in the season opener in a statement game that you have to approach differently. And that's where I think that a lot of this narrative about this team, we already know who the opponents are, but there is a big narrative about this team, I think, that's going to be shaped by how the schedule comes out and how they approach the preseason.
Well, the one thing that Kansas City has as a distinct advantage, and Zach Taylor talked about this yesterday, not saying that Kansas City had the advantage. He made reference to the Bengals division and how he thought that those games, and he made the point that inside the AFC North this year, everybody went 1-1 against everybody. Everybody had a 500 record in the division against one another. Everybody, right? So, look, like him, don't like him, you can mark it down. Deshaun Watson will be a different player next year in Cleveland. You can book it. He's got all off season, can play in the preseason, starts a regular season. He is going to be a force in Cleveland. Kenny Pickett, he had his ups and downs as a rookie, but the bottom line is he got him to a point where they had a chance to make the playoffs. He played well enough to get them over 500. The Baltimore Ravens, starting to look now more and more like, I don't know if it's a tag again or whatever it might be, this Lamar Jackson thing. They get him back. If he's healthy, we know what that means. And then, of course, you got the Bengals. Out in the Chiefs division, Derek Carr is gone from the Raiders. I didn't think he was anything great anyway, but a lot of people like him. And, he took his team to the playoffs last year. They stunk this year. Russell Wilson, does he have football left in him? I wouldn't rule him out. Guy's been too good for too long, but boy, he wasn't good this year. And then you got the Chargers. The Chargers, Herbert, talented dude, but, that's not the lineup you face in the AFC North for a total of 6 of your games. And then with the Bengals winning the division again, like Kansas City, you're going to play a first-place schedule. That's a whole different animal, man, than the Browns and those guys are going to be playing. You already know you got the Chiefs, as you pointed out. You're playing them next year.
Bills come here.
Yep. You got some heavyweights on that. And the division could be the difference in getting to what you're talking about, a home field advantage game. Kansas City, at least in those 6 games inside their division. And that's a third of your schedule. It's over a third of your schedule, right?
Yeah.
That's a distinct advantage. All right, I'm throwing it to the ham and eggers. You guys good?
All right.
We're great.
Good. We're good.
Am I an honorary ham and egger now?
Hold on, you are. Let me
Gotta get the intro here.
Let me run the deal. Hold on.
Run it.
It's that time of the show, the ham and eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
All right.
Hey,
Brandon.
Hey, how are you?
Let's get more from you about the game and kind of how everything went down, and get your overall thoughts. Just sort of the environment, what happened, all that stuff.
The environment was incredible, and I was there last year for the AFC Championship game, and I thought there sitting when Joe Burrow got the ball, one of those last 2 times in the final 5 minutes, that there was a shot that we were going to have deja vu with Money Mac, who's never missed a field goal in the postseason. Did I mess something up here?
No, we're just backwards.
Oh.
Just keep talking.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Frischner, and he's Brandon Seho, so we got that figured out.
There we go.
I'm new at this. Usually I sit in the corner.
There we go.
Thank you.
Got it.
It looks different. You're looking at it the opposite way.
It's true. I got it.
It's like a mirror. It was awesome. It was a fun environment. Obviously, the loss sucks. The most confusing moment of the game for every single person in the building was the 3rd and 9 Like, no one had any idea. There was no whistle. There was no – I know they showed from the all-22 view, the ref came in, the back judge came in, but there was no sign of that play being called dead. They ran the whole play. They ran the punting unit out there.
Well, that's the thing that
but that's not what lost the Bengals the game.
No, it's not what lost the Bengals the game because they did end up getting the third down stop on that. But I did think that the way that it played out, you could see the official running in, but you never heard a whistle. Did he ever blow the whistle?
No, he never blew the whistle. I think it was like, I don't want to get hit, so I'm going to get out of the play. But like if you blow the whistle, everyone stops. You've seen it a million times in football.
Yeah.
Even if it's that late, like how many times have we seen a timeout called, it looks like 3 seconds into a play where the refs are running in. But it's just, that's not what lost them the game. I think Joe Burrow is going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks we ever see play the game. But he had the ball. The Bengals had chances, and they couldn't get it done. Whether it's, whoever you want to put the blame on.
Is there any one person that you would put the blame on?
No, I don't think so. There's just a common theme of seeing Joe Burrow on the ground.
Yep.
Which is
put the blame on Chris Jones.
Which is you can put the blame on Chris Jones. Now I know this isn't a politics show.
Politics.
Everett. Does Aftab Pureval get reelected?
Oh man.
Tom?
There's no way, right?
Guys, look, okay. Look, you may not agree with my political opinions on anything.
Does he get reelected?
But if there's one thing I know for certain, in most major American cities, if you have a D next to your name, you are guaranteed to win. It's just a done deal. It's not even debatable. Just go look across the country.
Is this an election
Period.
Is this an
now,
election
No, he just got elected.
But
come on.
I saw some Bengals fan tweet something along the lines of Travis Kelce's now like the biggest public enemy in Cincinnati. And I'm like, I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to take the greatest UC football player ever over the mayor of Cincinnati. And I'm sure Aftab's a great guy.
Kelce was a clown, though. Kelce, you were.
Oh, he had fun. Who cares?
He really was. He was a clown.
I'm
with you all the way. I'm with you all the way. He was a clown.
Be original. It was literally word for word from The Rock. It was like 90s WWE. He's a smart enough guy. I don't know. I just didn't. There were ways he could have. I look back at Chris Jones, and I thought even Mahomes. I thought his cigar comment. You just sort of trade things. You're under the radar. You just let your play.
Mahomes is first class all the way, man.
Well, I'm not trying to do the class argument necessarily. I'm just trying to say that I don't know. I thought the WWE thing was tired, in your words. Thought it was tired.
Really tired.
I'm taking Kelce over the mayor, though.
You're taking Kelce because he's a UC guy.
Well, yeah.
He's not a Cincinnati guy. Kelce's a Cleveland guy. He's one of those guys, okay? When NBC, and I love the way NBC does it.
It's nothing against UC.
When they do their starting lineups for the game, okay? You know how the guy comes on and says, Thom Brennaman, Ohio University. You know how they do that whole thing, right? Okay. Kelce's the only guy.
He's not the only guy.
Oh, well, he's one of a handful. He has never said the University of Cincinnati one time. He'll say Cleveland, Ohio.
I'll say Cleveland. I think it's Cleveland Heights.
Whatever it is. But give me a break. He's a Cleveland guy through and through, and that's fine.
There was a debate.
I love Cleveland.
There was a debate on this between UC fans on Twitter for the first few years he was in the league, and it rubbed people the wrong way. But he doesn't hate UC. He doesn't hate Cincinnati. That's what people thought at first. Why is he saying his high school? He reps UC more than any pro athlete or celebrity out there. He wears UC stuff all the time on his podcast, to events, to concerts. His profile picture on Twitter is UC.
Okay. All right.
So
I'll give you that. I mean, if you say so, I believe it.
The AFTAB re-election campaign isn't until 2025.
Yeah.
So we get, or I guess
Stuck with him for a few more of those.
2025. So if the Bengals win the Super Bowl in the next 2 years, he's vindicated. Maybe.
But make no mistake about it, boys. If Travis Kelce wanted to become a Bengal, you'd take him tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, baby.
You'd take him tomorrow.
Sure.
End of story.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's so interesting about Kelce, the guy's going to the Hall of Fame. Not even debatable, right? And by the time his career is over, he'll probably go down as the second greatest tight end in the history of the National Football League. What's ironic is he'll go down as the second greatest tight end in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right. Well,
right?
Someone in the chat asked, when's the last time Travis Kelce's been to a UC game? I think he was here for homecoming in 2019, I believe.
Look, if those guys don't want to come back, I mean, for a football game, they're in the middle of their own season, even on a weekend off. I don't care if they come back or not. I mean, nobody goes back to games more than those Ohio State guys, but there are a lot of schools that have that. LSU has that. Alabama, those guys come back. I mean, they come back if they're able to. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't.
Is Joe Burrow a Buckeye or an LSU Tiger, Tom?
Oh, my God.
I think if you were to ask him in his heart of heart what he truly is.
Oh, no, Tom.
Oh, no.
No doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no question in my mind whatsoever
that he's a Louisiana
Did he
State
have
Tiger.
his playing chance at LSU? No doubt. Heisman Trophy, national championship, no question.
Tom.
But he is an Ohio guy through and through. No doubt in my mind.
I mean, he's an
Ohio
guy, but
I'm saying through and through. He'll never admit it, but we know Joe.
And I was just poking the bear. He can be both. Both fan bases can be proud of him and claim Joe Burrow. But he won a national championship at LSU.
He's a Coach O guy is what he is.
Eddie-O!
Go Tigers.
Eddie-O!
Go Tigers.
Eddie-O!
One team, one heartbeat.
Won a big-time game down there. You know I'm kidding about the Burrow stuff. Come on.
I don't know.
You know I'm kidding.
I don't know. Let's get you the Ohio State football and hoodie back.
No. I mean, come on. He got a chance to play, and we walked through this at length on WLW in the pregame show because Chick Ludwig's a huge Ohio State guy, alum, whole deal. And, we were walking back through our podcast with Urban Meyer earlier this year. I mean, for those people out there, Urban Meyer didn't play Joe Burrow. Wrong. Totally wrong.
Well, apparently somebody called the
J.T. Barrett was a starter. He will go down as one of the greatest college quarterbacks in the history of Ohio State. He won a ton of games. He gets hurt, breaks his ankle against Michigan. Cardale Jones steps in. They win the national championship. They come back to camp the next year. Those two are still there. And then you add Joe Burrow, who got hurt and could not play to get ready for the season. And those two guys were already ahead of him and had accomplished leading a team to a championship, winning a championship. So Burrow was already down a notch or two, but then when he got hurt, that was it. And then nobody helped orchestrate Joe Burrow's transfer school more than Urban Meyer did. Nobody helped the guy more than he did. So for the people out there, you don't like Urban, I don't care if you like Urban, it makes no difference to me. But he was not a guy that did not play Joe Burrow. That's just completely wrong.
I'm just asking all the best questions. I can give these hypotheticals all day.
Tom, I need to know an answer to a question. How close were we to the leader of men on Zach Taylor?
We're not that close. But I got to tell you, I have to tell you, I went back and watched the entire 23-and-a-half-minute press conference yesterday. I watched the whole thing last night. And his leadership skills as a macro guy in creating the culture down there has really been amazing. Now, make no mistake, and this is true for any coach, okay? And it's true for Belichick, who's regarded as the greatest coach in the history of the league. He had Tom Brady. Okay, so good for Zach Taylor. He's got Joe Burrow, right? He's got Jamar Chase. But, and he even acknowledged, he talked about how Brian Callahan, Lou Anarumo, himself, some of the other coaches, Darren Simmons, special teams guys, they've all been together since Zach got that guy, got the job. And he talked about how they're all of them are growing together. And I like the fact that he says, hey, look, I've got things I've got to get better at. Other guys have things they need to get better at. But we are growing together at the same time. And I think the way he handles himself, especially after that game on Sunday, it reminded me a lot of the Bruce Pearl deal when Auburn got beat in the national championship game, right?
Yep.
He could have buried the officials. He didn't do it. He handled all the questions, stand-up guy, wouldn't even let anybody take him down the road on the Osai play as if that cost him the game. I think Zach Taylor's got a chance to be a great head coach in the NFL. I don't think he's there yet. And just because they got the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row, obviously he's done a very, very, very good job. But I think he's got a chance. He's still so young. He's got a chance to be a great coach because he doesn't let his ego get in the way. And for some of these guys, when you get around them, their ego really gets in the way, and it stumps them from growing and getting better. You guys agree with that, or you think he's already a great coach?
I agree 100% with you, 99.9% with you. I think he's already a leader of men, but my barometer for that's a little bit different than yours because you're the creator of Leader of Men or one of the founders. I'm also biased. I worked with him his first 3 seasons here. I saw the work that him and his staff put on behind the scenes. I mean, nothing against Marvin Lewis, but when the locker room was in a spot where they had lost a lot of good players, they lost a lot of games. He comes in, obviously Burrow comes in his second year. You still have to orchestrate the team and get them to believe in the mission and winning, and that you're not going to be the same old Bengals or Bungles these next few years. And I really commend Zach. Every coach talks about culture. It's funny. Those clips have gone viral on Twitter when they'll just clip culture from every opening press conference. Yeah. But they really did it. I mean, this is just it's little things, and I got to give the Bengals front office a lot of credit too.
Yep.
It's little things you notice, like when you walk in the Bengals locker room, and for fans that have not done that, when you see those photos of players walking in the loading dock outside of the locker room and the outfits of the week before the game, until Zach Taylor's second year, when you walked in the locker room, there was no paint. There was no screens. There was no motivational messages. There might have been like one in like one spot in there, whatever the motto of the year was for Marvin's teams. But they completely changed the culture, how it looked, how things operated. It was night and day once Joe Burrow got here and how Zach Taylor's led that team.
Yep. And by the way, one footnote, and you know I love you guys on the chat, and we've got a lot of new guys on here. Could someone please take a step back and ask yourself a question? What is the job of a college football head coach? What's his job? It's to win. Right? Mm-hmm. End of story. That's the guy's job, is to win. Okay? So for the people that jump on there and start saying, oh, how many great quarterbacks have come out of Ohio State? ... Somebody on here. Crickets. That's not the job of a college head football coach, to develop quarterbacks that are stars in the NFL. That's not their job. Their job is to win college football games and to win national championships. That's their job. Not to produce the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. If you come along with that and that's part of the deal, that's great. But that's not their job. Their job is to win national championships. End of story.
Thom, if you had to pick one, who you're a bigger fan of, Urban Meyer or Ohio State, which one would you pick?
Well, I know Urban Meyer, and I like him. A lot of people don't. You're allowed not to like him.
I'm just giving you all the crazy hypotheticals.
There are a lot of people that know me and don't like me.
UDF or Starbucks?
No, not even debatable. Come on.
That's free pub.
Not even.
United Dairy Farmers.
I am not, never have been, and not because UDF is a sponsor. I've never been a Starbucks guy. Now we'll never get them as a sponsor. But that's not me. Not who I am. What about Paul Doherty? You're a morning cup of coffee kind of a guy, Doc, from themorningline.substack.com. You don't strike me as being a big Starbucks guy, Doc.
I'm not a Starbucks guy. You know why?
Why? I was just waiting. I want to know why.
I can't say those names, man. I can't. You know, all those fancy names that they have for coffee, I really can't say them. Anything that ends in like IATO, INI, no way.
I don't, the thing that bothers me, Doc, hand in hand what you're saying, I mean, you can't walk in there and say, can I have a small coffee? Can I have a large coffee? It's words like grande and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
It's so pretentious. And I'll tell you what else, Tom. My wife is a geek for Starbucks iced tea.
Yeah.
It's like $4, right?
Right.
She gets one of these things, probably 5 or 6 times a week. Now think about that. You're dropping $4 6 times a week. That's $24 times $52. That's more than $1,000 on freaking iced tea.
We told our daughter, who's down at college, we said, look, you want to go out, have a couple cocktails? That's on your money. And this stuff with going to Starbucks and spending $4 or $5, that's out too. D-U-N done.
Yeah. Well, my nickname, especially on the blog, people know me as Johnny Thin Wallet. And it's a well-deserved nickname, by the way. But I could not see myself spending $4 a day on coffee.
No.
It's just not that great, I love coffee. It's important to my functioning as a human being before noon. But I'm not dumping $4 on a cup of unpronounceable coffee.
For $4, you can buy a large cup of coffee at UDF and go in and get 2 more refills over the course of the day. It still wouldn't cost you $5.
Right. Plus, don't they have those cool flavored creams, right?
Well, I don't use those either, Doc. But, I mean, that's okay. I mean, everybody's got their own thing with coffee. That's fine. That's fine. All right, let me ask you, Doc. Let's get into the whole Bengals thing. Your thoughts about the game. What struck you beginning to end that stood out for you in that game?
They didn't block well enough. That's a simplistic answer, but it's a pretty easy answer. They did not, when they did give Joe Burrow time, when he had time, say at the end of the first half in that last drive, and to start the second half, they produced 10 points fairly quickly. He had that extra split second to look over the field and throw the ball. He was, most of the time, he was under duress. Kansas City played better than I thought it would from that perspective, and I thought that was a difference in the game, unlike most people around here who thought the refs rigged the game in favor of the Chiefs. I thought it was based on real stuff that happened on the field, not on clown show conspiracy theories.
Well, look, Gene Steratore, I don't know if you heard the story today, comes out and he talked about, in his opinion, there were a number of calls, especially that final scramble by Mahomes, where Osai committed the penalty, gave him the extra 15 yards. They kicked the field goal. They won the game. He said clearly there were 1 or 2 holding calls. The officials just completely blew it. I'm not into the conspiracy thing either. I like the way that Brian Billick put it on the show yesterday. You can argue with calls in every single game, but the administration of the game was terrible. I've never seen a play redone. I announced football games for 25 years in the NFL. I have never seen a play that was done over again.
Well, the way they explained it and the way the rule is, it was the right call. I mean, maybe most people have never heard a crowd that loud. Maybe most games are not that intense. That was a hard game to officiate. I mean, I'm not making excuses for those guys. They blow a lot of calls, and it raises a legitimate point that's been raised in the past as to whether some of these officials, Tom, are simply too old to be doing this anymore. They can't keep up with what they're trying to officiate. That's a legitimate gripe. But I think they got that call right. If you do notice the replay, you do see, I guess it's the back judge, the guy who was supposed to have blown the whistle that nobody could hear, running in as the play was snapped. That leads me to believe that, yes, he saw that clock was still running after an incomplete pass, and he was going to stop the action. He blew the whistle, and nobody could hear it. So, I mean, people can complain about the way that situation came about and I guess the uniqueness of it, but I don't see anybody saying that it was the wrong call. I think it was the right call. The administration of it was clunky, but hell, you got 70,000 people screaming their lungs out. I thought it was a hard game to officiate, partly for that reason. I didn't think it was a great game for the refs, but by no means did I think that anybody had a hand in trying to change the outcome to benefit TV ratings because Roger Goodell and the league hates the Bengals. That's just ridiculous, and it makes people who say that stuff look stupid.
Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. So now you move forward, and you look at this team, and we were debating it before you came on, and figuring out what you need to win a Super Bowl. Their defense was outstanding this year. Whether or not Lou Anarumo gets a chance to be a head coach, we'll know in the next 2-3 weeks, whatever it might be. It doesn't appear to be trending in that direction, but you never know. So you assume for a second he's going to be back, so you have one of the best defensive coordinators around. They'll have to make some personnel decisions on that side of the ball, the Von Bells, the Jesse Bates, the Eli Apples of the world, the Jermaine Pratts of the world, those guys. But, Doc, for me, when we were making a comment earlier, for me, of the 4 teams left standing, the Bengals were the only one that did not have a dominant, and I mean game-changing dominant, defensive lineman. For me, that's got to be priority number one in this offseason.
Or an edge rusher, a Von Miller type, the kid from Dallas whose name escapes me right
now. Michael
Parsons.
Parsons.
Yeah, you're right. Jones probably was the most important player in that game the other day. The Eagles kid who did the same thing to the 49ers, maybe the most important player in that game. I think they thought they had that in Trey Hendrickson. I don't know that he quite had as good a year as he had last year, although that would have been pretty hard to do. He had a great year last year. I think you're right. I think something else, though. I think that every team, especially the Bengals, I would think, needs to take a hard look at how they play offense. If I'm the Bengals and I know that Joe Burrow, the difference between having 2 seconds of time to throw and 2.4 or 5 is so huge, maybe I think about having a fullback. Maybe I think about leaving a blocking tight end into block just about every passing down. I don't try to get cute or fancy. I've already got 3 of the better wide receivers in the game on the same team, and I've already seen what Joe Burrow can do when he has time. I change it up a little on offense and place a much greater emphasis on giving Burrow that extra 0.3 of a second. And I know they need the edge rusher. Sure, everybody does. But I think that's a lot harder to get than simply tweaking your offense and the way you run it to give Burrow all the time he needs.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the fullback because that has been, we're seeing it now evolve the other way with the tight end position. For a long time, tight ends were in vogue. Then you had a bunch of offensive-minded guys that never used a tight end. I mean, for a decade, there were really only 2 or 3 really good tight ends. Now there are a lot of really good tight ends. The only offensive coach, to my knowledge, at least that I watch on a semi-regular basis, who very much utilizes the tight end, ironically, a kid from Lodi, Ohio, is Kyle Juszczyk, and that's Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco. Juszczyk is going to the Pro Bowl every year, maybe because he's the only fullback in the NFL, but he's a guy that, clearly they utilize the fullback. It's not a bad idea. Go ahead, please.
The Ravens have used, I guess, Patrick Ricard. He's about a 290-pound fullback. But you can scheme around great pass rushes, and the Bengals have done that to a large extent. They run shorter routes. They run shorter drops. Burrow has gotten really good at getting the ball out quickly. But in a game like the other day, when one guy is just doing it to you play after play, sure could use an extra guy to block. I mean, given the quality of the wide receivers this team has, do you really need another wide receiver or even a receiver, another in the pattern? I don't think so. I mean, Hurst was pretty good this year catching balls. I'd rather have him blocking. So Burrow has time to find one of the 3 really good guys he's got.
Yeah, and that was a big hit in that game, and a lot of people have not talked about, and that was the injury to Tyler Boyd. Because, we have seen so many times over the last couple of years where Burrow has been healthy, where for whatever reason, maybe they're double-teaming this guy or double-teaming that guy. A lot of that stuff's way over my pay scale. But all of a sudden, there'll be that game once every 3, 4, 5 weeks where Boyd – bust out for 110, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. And I thought Romo did a fabulous job there on the Bengals' last 2 drives of pointing out, without Boyd in the game, they were doubling up on Higgins, they're doubling up on Chase, and that's why Hurst was so wide open on that 3rd down and 14 to temporarily keep that drive alive. I still come back to, Doc, that same thing, though, and I made a big deal of it yesterday. And look, I've given Zach Taylor a lot of love on this show here over the last couple of weeks. But I still get back to the fact that you've got the ball. You don't want Mahomes to get the ball. You get 7 yards on a first down just inside your own 40. 2 more first downs, you kick the field goal and win the game. And you're throwing 25 and 40-yard bombs down the field on 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 3. I didn't get it.
That's hard to understand. I didn't hear anybody ask Taylor specifically about that. Maybe they saw a look that they liked, the matchup that they wanted, and thought they could hit it. But, common sense says in that situation that you on 2nd and 3, maybe you try to use up a little clock and get the first down. And they didn't do that. I don't know. I'm not one of those guys that's big on second-guessing strategy or managers who call this or that or the other. I'm not as smart as most of the people who watch these games, evidently, because I don't harp on or see a lot of this stuff that I guess is pretty obvious. I did when that occurred. I said, well, yeah, maybe they could have gone another way, but I tend to give coaches and managers the benefit of the doubt more than I should, probably, because they're there. They're right in the middle of it. They're playing a game. I'm watching in the press box or on TV, and I don't know if they think that they've got a favorable matchup on one side that they believe they can exploit for a big gain. I don't know that. I'm just watching TV, so I tend to give them a break on that stuff.
See, I don't give them breaks. I don't give them breaks. It's their job to know the game. They've got a guy upstairs. It's an offensive coordinator that can see everything going on. Better than the head coach. We've talked about that before. For baseball coaches, baseball managers, and for head football coaches, they have the worst seat in the house of being able to tell what the hell is going on. They really do. But, look, when you're talking about trying to win a Super Bowl, and I loved what Zach Taylor said yesterday, that as a play caller and his staff, that they have to get better just like players have to get better. and that he feels like their growth the last 2 years as a staff, coordinators, him as a head coach, special teams, all the stuff, they've gotten better. And I think we all have to agree with that. Even as this season went on, I thought they got better.
Well, they're all young guys.
Yeah.
And they're certainly young in terms of their experience in the NFL. Lou Anarumo may be whatever. I don't know what he is, 40, 45. But he hasn't been in the league very long, you know. Zach Taylor hasn't been in the league very long, and he was never even a coordinator before he got this job. So I agree. I think that the coaching, especially this year, went up leaps and bounds. I mean, how can you fault Lou Anarumo for the job he did? How can you fault Zach Taylor? I mean, look what happened to the Rams.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know they lost a bunch of players to injury, but still, Taylor has a team back in a position to go to the Super Bowl a year after they're in the Super Bowl. Unless you're the Patriots, that hasn't happened very often. So, I think that they're good and they're only going to get better if they can keep that staff together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was around when Andy Reid was just getting the job in Philadelphia. I think if you compare to right now, and look, we'll see what happens moving forward. Most people feel like Reid is one of the top two, if not the best coach in the NFL right now. I'm not saying over the long haul with Belichick, but right now, Reid, by many, is considered to be the best head coach in the league. I think Zach Taylor, if you just look at the last 2 years, now again, he had Burrow, and, Andy Reid had Donovan McNabb, who was a great player. Couldn't win the Super Bowl, but a great player. Now he's got Mahomes, who's a great player, has won a Super Bowl, going to his third one. The Taylor is trending in that direction. I'm curious because so many people, and this is one of those things that I look at, Doc, and you've seen this before in all sports. I hear people saying all the time, Tim McGee, by the way, yesterday vehemently disagreed with this comment. But all I read all the time is Joe Burrow's going to give the Bengals a hometown discount. What if he doesn't give the Bengals a hometown discount? Does that make him a bad guy?
Of course not. No, I mean, no. It's a business. And if the NFL and the people who run it and the people who run your team have a chance to cut your throat, they will, because it's a business. Why should the player be all benevolent and say, oh yeah, I love playing here? No, you have a finite amount of time to make as much money as you can make. And I don't know what the average lifespan of a quarterback is. I think a running back or just anybody in general overall is about 4 years. I mean, what if you and I had a 4-year career? We wouldn't say, I love working here, so I'm going to let you guys underpay me. No, he's going to take what he can get and get it while the getting's good. He's under no obligation to take any hometown, offer some hometown discount. If anything, the team should say, you're so important to us that we're going to pay you more than we should pay you. We're going to pay you more than the going rate of the best quarterback in the NFL.
I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. I mean, the Bengals are $44 million looking ahead to next year under the salary cap. It's been well documented, all this money coming in, the naming rights to the stadium, that basically they've seen this on the horizon. Once Burrow proved that he was worthy of the number one pick in the draft and what he's capable of doing for this franchise, and they basically have built up a war chest for this thing, knowing that the more money they have guaranteed, the less money they have as far as the salary cap is concerned. And Doc, it's the first time in a long time that I can honestly say I trust the people down there to know what they're doing.
Well, we'll see, won't we? They've always paid so-called skilled position players. I mean, Mike Brown loves skilled position players. He might not love Andrew Whitworth as much as a skilled position player and didn't pay him, but he'll pay Joe Burrow the going rate, whatever that happens to be at the time, I'm pretty certain he won't pay him any more than that, though.
Yeah. Well, you got a good point. So what do we do now, Doc, with all our time? When the Bengals are done, sports-wise? I mean, do you get the vibe? And I'll end with this. I want to ask you this question. I was bouncing around on Saturday and had to pop in some different places that had televisions on, sports televisions on. A lot of different places. Workout place, some other places I was popping in and out of. Not one place did I walk in had the Xavier basketball game on. And they played a huge game on Saturday against Creighton. I mean, Creighton's got a good team. Xavier's having a great year. There wasn't one television in the place that had the basketball game on. I don't know how many people watched the UC Houston game right after that was over. That was a great game. UC might have played its best game of the season. What do we get excited about? What are we following now?
Well, I've always said that, especially lately, the day after the NFL season is over is when the college basketball season begins. So these days you got college basketball has about a 7-week season, right? It runs from the second week in February until the end of March, and that's just the way it is. Xavier is Xavier. They've got a extremely loyal fan base, but it's kind of constrained. It's kind of limited. Xavier is what Xavier is. 10-250 at Cintas Center every game. Not 10-249, not 10-251. And I've joked every once in a while. That's probably every Xavier fan in town is at the Xavier basketball game. That's not true, obviously, but it seems that way sometimes. It's a very well run, obviously excellent program that is not even second fiddle in this town, because you got the Bengals and you have UC and maybe even the Reds and FC Cincinnati that have a greater following than Xavier. So it doesn't surprise me that there were no TVs turned to the X game, especially when the Bengals are still playing football.
All right, Doc. Well, we'll continue to plod forward. We've got college basketball, as you said, now on the radar, and we've got baseball coming up around the corner. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Not a lot of enthusiasm for the Reds, but they are going to play this season, and so we're going to be following them and getting your thoughts on it. And so thank you for your time today, and as always, themorningline.substack.com.
Great. Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Have a good day, Doc. Great to have Doc with us. Paul, I was thinking about this driving in today. During the season, we had Casey's Stink List. Okay? Yeah. And it was very entertaining. A lot of the folks that watch our show every single day were really excited about it. A lot of fun on the chat about it. I think you should start to do your top 15 college basketball poll and give us a weekly kind of thing, okay? Are you okay with that?
Xavier number one. If you want to talk college basketball, Tom, I will give you whatever you want with college basketball.
Well, it's funny. Our buddy Seth Davis, and we're going to have him on the show here when we get close to the NCAA tournament, does a great job for CBS Sports. He wrote a column today that basically is for a lot of us out there. And I used to be the biggest college basketball fan on the planet. I never missed games, and then, it's just started to wane in recent years, unless my Bobcats are making a big run in a tournament. But it started to wane in recent years. And he wrote an article today that basically is a catch-me-up article. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For people that have been following football all year, and Seth's a really smart guy, and he's smart enough to figure out, just like Doc just said, for a lot of people is now when their interest in following college basketball will begin now in earnest. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for the casual college basketball fan, this is the point of the season where you know which teams are good, which teams aren't, which teams have separated themselves, which teams haven't. Conference season is really kicking up. Tonight is an unbelievable night. There's a ton of great games going on around the country tonight. Kansas and Kansas State obviously is a game that the Chatterbox crew is at, but there's a ton of great games across the country. And yeah, Tom, hey, if you want a list, if you want I won't do the stink list. I'll do the whatever the opposite of the stink
but I
list
think
is.
what you have to do is when you
list?
do this poll,
Yeah.
I think we put them in categories, though. I like the categories of the stink list rather than just a 1 through 15 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because, I was looking at the two polls today. And, what a disparity you see in some of these polls and what they think about teams. Normally, coaches poll AP, there might be a 1 or 2 number spread on where they have teams ranked. There are teams that are ranked in one poll that aren't ranked in another poll. Illinois is an example, right? Okay. So, and then you get a disparity in a team like Marquette, where there's 4 positions different in one poll from the other. But I think what you need to do is if you can, is let's set it up like the stink list thing, where you have the bona fide title contenders, in your opinion.
Victory Parkway, that's what you can call it. And then just
He's
below
onto
that,
something there, Brandon. He's onto
then just
something
below
there.
that, Dana Gardens.
Yeah.
And then I don't know
You
where.
got to get a Dana Gardens logo for Xavier instead of X. Just a Dana
Yes.
Garden.
I
That
still
will
need
be
to go
their
there.
logo.
Am I allowed in there?
It's a welcoming place. I'll leave that up to BJ. But
I'm not so sure about that part.
not with that.
I want to go. Not with this hat.
Brandon,
I wouldn't wear
if
this.
you and I walked in there,
I
it
wouldn't wear
would,
this hat.
We would need Mr. T along.
I do want to go to a Xavier game this year. Cintas Center is, and I'm going to get heat for wearing this hat and saying the Cintas Center is a great arena.
Yes,
it is.
it is.
It's a fun time.
Yes, it is.
There's some great games left. This Wednesday is going to be a massive one. I'll tell you what.
All right, hold that thought here a second, because Andrew in the chat, here's what he believes the tiers should be, and I think he's onto something here. Okay? The top tier, Final Four, right?
Sure.
Okay, those are the teams you think can get to the Final Four. Next, bracket buster. So that could be a team, let's say if Xavier's a 3, okay?
Yeah.
If they are. And they might be better than that. But if they're a 3, they can bust a 2 in the Sweet 16, right?
Sure.
Okay, so they could beat them. Then you go to if they got hot, right?
Yeah.
Say like a TCU, although they're going to be a top 4, but there's 4 seed. There could be a team that if they got hot, you never know. And then
UK.
North Carolina, UK, Duke,
Yep.
who knows, right? Which, by the way, and I know nobody really cares, but my son and I were talking about this last night. I looked at it on my own. And then about an hour later, he comes to me because it's one of the colleges he's looking at. And we went up there and visited. What in the hell has happened to Syracuse basketball?
Oh, well, it's very easy. Jim Boeheim. It's very easy. He's hamstrung the program. He won't retire. He's been around forever.
Well, I know, but he's done pretty good there. He's like the second or third winningest coach all time.
Oh, well, when you stick around a place for long enough, you're going to
Well,
stack
now,
wins.
come on. That's not fair. One or 2 national titles?
Yeah, one. He won with Carmelo.
Yeah.
I think that's his only one. I think he's only won one.
Okay.
And seriously, I'm not even kidding at this point. I think that Boeheim's he's got to retire. You look at some of these guys like Krzyzewski. He probably stuck around too long. In my opinion, Krzyzewski should have retired after their last national championship, but that's just me. He stuck around a little too long. I thought Roy did okay. Roy just loves college basketball. Roy Williams. Jay Wright got out. Jay is now crushing it in the broadcast booth, but Jay got out. I thought Jay was going to be around for 10, 15 years longer. He was right in the coaching prime, and he got out. And then, now it's Boeheim. Boeheim's kind of the last one of this old regime that hasn't retired yet because everybody else has gotten out. And he's the last one that's clinging on that hasn't gotten out of coaching yet. Because I'm trying to think of anybody around the game. There are coaches that are older that have been at their school. Look at Greg Campy at Oakland. That guy's been there for, 40 years or something? He's been around forever. But I'm talking about the high major schools that you think of and these brand names and everything. I think Jim is just – and his shtick is getting real old. And
They were in the Final Four in 2016.
Yeah, well, it's the classic Syracuse where they get in as like
a 10 seed.
I was going to say an 11, a 10 seed, and then they just find their way through the bracket
and
into the Sweet 16.
2 years ago, they were Sweet 16 bounced.
Yeah.
But that was, and then last year, 16 and 17, this year, 13 and 10. They haven't been a top 3 seed or 4 seed since 2013, so 10 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, they haven't been a protected seed in almost 10
Somebody
years.
said here on the chat, Huggins still clinging. AM said that. I don't agree with that. I don't think Huggins is still clinging.
I think Huggins is.
I love Huggy Bear. He's my all-time favorite, maybe coach, period. Because I grew up during the Kenyon Martin, Jordan era at UC. I don't think Huggy's got much time left in college basketball.
I don't think he has players. And I think you get a hard time. I mean, just this week, right? I mean, if you're comparing, let's say, a Boeheim to a Huggins,
Yeah.
okay, because they're 2 of the top 4 winningest coaches in the history of basketball, D1, right? I mean, this week alone, Huggins' teams beat TCU and they beat Auburn. Syracuse never wins games like that anymore.
No.
Never. I mean, they played Virginia, who's good. They won, 7 in a row? They're ranked 7, something like that. They got a good team. They're not a world beater. They went up to Syracuse and won last night. Syracuse just doesn't win those games anymore.
No.
Well, and I think
Huggy can still win some games.
He can.
Yeah.
He can. I think he's getting toward the end of his tenure, but I do think I'm with you, Tom. I do think Huggins
definitely has a bigger leash than.
And he's also in the Big 12, which
Right.
just naturally you're going to have better talent and a better team in the Big 12 than you are in the ACC right now. The ACC's down.
Yeah, really down. Really down.
And I never thought about it until now, but Huggins is probably kind of having the same mindset as Dusty, where he wants to win that championship no matter how long it takes.
Yeah, I agree.
And and he's been so close.
Be.
He was in the Final Four. Big injury happens when he's at West Virginia. Obviously, we know what happens with Kenyon. I mean, you can't blame the guy.
Can't blame the guy one bit.
Yeah, I just – and Sir Boy wonder what happened to Georgetown. But Patrick Ewing,
That guy –
they will resolve that situation hopefully this year.
How long has he been the head coach there?
6 years?
Yeah, something like that.
6 years?
Yep.
6 years, I think.
Now, what do we do here in this chat? Because, Elise has become a regular now. Elise, we're really glad you're here. She says, I don't care about college basketball.
Well,
and then somebody else jumps in and says it doesn't make a bit of difference. Conference champions, postseason conference championships, yawn. Says Ken Cincy USA. NCAA tournament is it, period. Now, if you're in our position, and I'm not saying either one of you are wrong. In fact, I think in many cases, with the oversaturation of these games on every night of the week, multiple outlets, it's saturated the game. But the money talks and the BS walks. But what else are we supposed to talk about on this show?
No, I mean,
right now, what are we going to do? It's a sports talk show. So I'm open to ideas. Elise?
Australia?
Ken
basketball?
Cincy? Anybody?
No.
I can tell you one thing it's not going to be is FC.
Oh, come on, Tom. We got you on FC.
No, we will talk about FC, but I'm saying we can't sit around here logically and expect to hold an audience talking for an hour a day about FC Cincinnati. They've got a great following. They've got an incredible stadium. They've got great ownership. They had a hell of a year last year. They nearly got to the finals. But just like you can't make a living sitting around here talking about Xavier basketball for an hour in a 2-hour show. Yeah. And that's no knock on Xavier. We couldn't do it talking about UC for an hour. We've got to find other things to talk about. What's the appetite for the baseball conversation?
Woof.
I think from
your perspective.
Yeah.
I'm asking the people that are watching right now, and you can jump in on the chat. I'm sincerely asking, when pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks, and they start playing spring training games, You want us talking about the Reds for 25, 35 minutes? I mean, is that going to get people to watch this show?
I honestly think, Tom, from your perspective of being around the game of baseball and you having a lot of baseball fans that have followed your career, yeah, they will want to hear you talk about the Reds and baseball when it happens.
Okay.
Now, it's not going to be like football, but I think for me and a lot of people who are, let's say, Bengals, Reds, UC fans, there's two of those teams aren't going to the postseason this year and maybe not next year in basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is. So once the Bengals are done, it's like, what's left? Like that's why I'm a huge college basketball fan, but I just don't have much interest in watching when my team sucks.
Okay.
Well, we got the Tracer in here.
We got the Tracer. Tracer, look. First of all, good morning. How are you? How was your weekend? How was your big weekend with Danae out of town?
My weekend was nice. Can I address that question that you threw out to our audience?
I was getting ready to ask you that, but I wanted to say good morning first.
Good morning. Here's the thing, and Tom's funny how he sets things up. He's kind of a brilliant guy. His mind works very quick. Here's what happened, and we're going to address the elephant in the room. You were on WLW yesterday, right? Doing the pregame show, or Sunday.
Sunday, yes.
Well, here's what we're thinking about doing at Chatterbox, and we need to get some feedback on this because I think it's a brilliant idea. The reason Thom was on WLW, he was using 700 WLW as his sandbox. And what we want to do is maybe take phone calls. And Thom wanted to get introduced to taking phone calls and seeing how that went. What about taking phone calls on the show? Kind of make it a hybrid. We'd have like it is with taking phone calls. And that's something that we're discussing, and I think it's a great idea. And I thought you did a great job handling the phone calls. I think what you have to do when you take a phone call is you need to put people on their toes. I used to guess a woman's weight if she didn't like me. I'd guess 275. You insult people where they live. Let's say someone's calling from Norwood. You insult people from Norwood. Anderson, East Price Hill. Did I mention Norwood? And then also talk about yourself in the third person. People loved it when I did that. And then also, Thom, tell them how what a great broadcaster. No one can broadcast baseball, basketball, football like you. And we'll stir the pot. But I think taking phone calls is a good idea on this show.
I think it's a great idea, and my understanding is, Paul, you correct me if I'm wrong, or Brandon is we're entertaining that idea. But the thing you have to have, and you really do have to have it, if you're taking phone calls, is because we could be facing, legal issue, whatever it might be. You have to have a delay, right? Or the ability, the second somebody says something, to cut them off. And you had that at WLW where you could do that.
Right. But here's something that you have to think, though, Thom. You've got to think of yourself as not Thom Brennaman. You've got to think of yourself as like a Jerry Springer. You got to stir the pot, get it going like that. And maybe the Ham and Eggers, someone could be like Steve Bilko is like co-host with on the show. You guys could shave your head, maybe. I think you guys would look great.
Well, wait. While we get into that, talking about mayors, what are your thoughts on the mayor of Cincinnati and what he had to say about the Bengals, Tracy?
I had a problem with too much trash talking before this game, and I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah,
I thought, people get on me. You're not a Bengal fan. I'm a Joe Burrow fan. So all the trash talking, the smoking cigars, I didn't like that, but I wasn't going to say anything. So when it happened, it just gives the other team that incentive, right? And you think it doesn't, but it really does. And you heard it with Kelsey when he slammed the mayor, calling him a jabroni, which he is. That I didn't like. And that's so much different than in baseball because we never talk trash in baseball. I played with a guy by the name of Paul O'Neill. Had a pretty good career, didn't he, with the Reds and the Yankees? Paul never took down an opposing team, an opposing player. Paul O'Neill was probably he was a superstar, but a low-keyed superstar. And he would go like Rick Mahler. There's an example. Rick Mahler pitched for the Braves. And Paul, the time in Atlanta, I think he went 4 for 5 and hit 2 home runs. So Paul's playing in Cincinnati. He's facing Rick Mahler. And I says, oh, boy, you're going to have a big game against him. I said, Paul, you owned him. He says, Trace, he's got a really good curveball. I was lucky. Because you don't talk trash, right? You play it down. Watch this example. If you don't like a player, like let's slam on Senzel the whole year on this show, and we'll see what happens. You ever hear like an announcer, he's never missed a field goal all year. What happens? He misses a field goal. It's a weird thing. It's a superstitious thing that I have, and I think it played out with the Bengal game because I think the Bengals were better than the Chiefs.
Yeah, it was a tough day for the town here. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm kind of curious, you know, Tracy, when you play with guys, baseball season's very, very long. You're there every single day and playing games and competing with guys. And look, you know, it's no different than the work environment down the street here in Hamilton. There are some guys you like more than other guys, and there are some guys you just don't like at all. But when you know the guys are coming up on free agency and you're starting to wonder, hey, you know, if this guy, in baseball this wasn't an issue because you didn't have a salary cap, but I'm just kind of curious, right. You know, you might have a guy that you know is going to be a free agent. You know they're going to have to spend a ton of money on him. If they do that, then it might mean you and two other guys got to leave. Are guys looking around even as you're not competing on the field in an AFC championship game, but during the week in the locker room or during the week in a baseball season, and you're getting down into August and September, and whether your team's in the hunt or not in the hunt, and maybe that'll vary the answer here. But are players thinking about the business side even while they're still playing? Not in the game, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you're looking around maybe toward the end of the season if your team is in the playoffs, say, hey, who's going to be back next year? And I think with the Bengals, and maybe this is overstepping a little bit, but Joe Burrow, to me, is my favorite athlete ever in the city of Cincinnati. I mean, I love the guy. I think he's so cool and so damn good. If he had a decent offensive line, do you ever notice that game? I mean, Joe Burrow's scrambling around where Mahomes is stepping in the pocket. He's got a clean pocket. It's just such a difference. You give Joe Burrow time, he never misses. And I mean never misses. He's that good. But he might be the first player to get a $500 million contract. I could see him getting $50 million a year for 10 years. That would certainly, you know, that's a contract. Think about what the pervert in Cleveland got. $235 guaranteed for 5 years. So I think Joe Burrow is a guy that you got to sign. You can find Chase is great, but you can find wide receivers. You can find running backs. You can't find a quarterback like Joe Burrow. You just can't. They're not out there. He's too good.
Well, he is too good. There's been a lot talked about and written about. You know, I asked Doc about the whole hometown discount thing. I'm curious your opinion on that. You know, now some people feel like your longtime teammate coming up through the Reds minor league system, Hall of Famer, one of the top 4 players in the history of the Reds franchise, without a doubt, Barry Larkin, that he took a hometown discount to stay here with the Reds when Carl Lindner still owned the team. Well, what are your thoughts about a quote-unquote hometown discount?
You know, people will argue that was a mistake signing Barry Larkin. Tom, I was at the game that Barry Larkin was making his last game, last at bat. You remember this, Tom?
I was doing the game. I was doing the game for Fox and all the banners hanging in the stands and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
And there was a standing ovation for Barry. And people were saying, thank you. Not, we need to sign him. And Carl Lindner was at the game. And I remember Carl Lindner standing up, clapping, and he thought to himself, I got to sign this guy because that's what the fans want. And I don't think that was one of the best signings, signing Barry Larkin at his age to that kind of a contract. So that's what happened. He kind of got involved. Carl Lindner was thinking so much emotion instead of the business. And I think it kind of backfired him on that. And Tom, you were there. That's what happened. Right?
There's no doubt that's what happened. Okay, but then maybe that was a bad example of Larkin. What about a player in a hometown discount? I mean, at the end of the day, does the money talk and the BS walk, or do you think there are guys out there that say, you know what? I mean, when you're talking this kind of money, and I don't know, I'll never make this kind of money. Do you think there are guys out there that say, hey, it's really important to me, and let's just use Burrow in this case, it's really important to me to make sure that Chase is around here, that Higgins is around here, that fill in the blank is able to be around here, to give us a chance to win, therefore I take less. You say what to that?
Okay, that's kind of like a Ken Griffey Jr. contract, right? And what they do is they defer that money, not taking less money, but deferring money. And I think that's something that Joe Burrow might want because, those wide receivers are pretty top notch. But it is a business, Tom. But here's something that nobody talks about. Do you feel comfortable playing in that stadium? Do you feel comfortable playing in Cincinnati? Do you want to go someplace or some other city and start all over again? You see so many players, they go somewhere, baseball all the time. You go somewhere and you're not the same.
Yep.
It's kind of like Juan Soto with the Padres. I mean, Juan Soto was God in Washington with the Washington Nationals. He goes over to San Diego. He did not perform like he did in Washington. You aren't given that break, that second chance, as you are when you're 10 years into your career and you've played in the same town.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said, too, for the whole cost of living thing. I mean, Tim McGee and I got into this a little bit yesterday. I look at a guy like Jose Ramirez. I mean, what kind of money could that guy have made on the open market, right? He's become a star in Cleveland. He clearly likes being in Cleveland. He's playing for a manager that he very much likes in Cleveland that isn't going anywhere, and Terry Francona. They don't spend much money. And he could have gotten, Lord knows, probably $8, $10, $12, $15 million more per year and decided, you know what? I like it here. I don't want to go down and fight traffic getting to the ballpark at Dodger Stadium and trying to get in there. Can you imagine? And I often try to explain this to people when they'll ask me about, what's your favorite ballpark? And I get asked that question all the time. A lot of it has to do with the things you're talking about right now. If you flew me in a helicopter and dropped me off at Dodger Stadium and I could take the helicopter out after the game, it's the greatest place in the world. But it's got a parking lot that has like 20-something thousand spaces around the lot. And to try to get out of there, if you're a player after a game, I can't imagine how much time you're spending in your life in a car.
See, we talk about stuff on this show that no one else is talking about. That is such a great point. Do I want to go and let's say I live in Pacific Palisades. And if there was no traffic, what is that, 10 minutes away? Mm-hmm. But you could be stuck in traffic for an hour and a half. I mean, you have 6 to 7 lanes of freeway on each side. Who wants that? I mean, you want it easy. I thought coming and playing in Cincinnati, of all the places that I played, was the easiest. I thought the media was easy. I thought getting to the ballpark was easy. I thought it was a good hitter's park because it was turf. I like playing on turf. There's a lot that goes into it. Why would you disrupt something that you've had a lot of success just for a few more million, a couple million more? It does. I mean, you've got FU money already. Yeah. And I'll tell you the number one key on this as far as going to another place, and that's your wife. Because it goes like Carson Palmer. Remember when she came here, she says, well, I'm not going to stay here in the wintertime. I'm going back to Los Angeles. So your wife plays into that too. It's very important what your wife thinks. And is she having a good time?
I've always found it fascinating, even though there are still guys like you, Chris Sabo, Paul O'Neill, guys from that, sort of time frame where you guys all came up together, that there are a lot of you that made your year-round homes here in Cincinnati. You might have gone somewhere for a little while, but you drifted back. But the football players, almost all of them seem to want to stay here. I mean, whether you're talking about Munoz or Montoya or Joe Walter or Chris Collinsworth or, whoever it is, it seems like so many of these guys, the football players, love being here. And I think a big part of that, Tracy, tell me if you think I'm wrong here, I think a big part of that is because of when they played their season. So if you're a football player, if you don't want to be away from your family for 4 or 5 months, you got kids. Okay, well, if you want to live in Miami, that's fine. But your kids are going to school in Miami while you're playing football in Cincinnati. So you're never really home. I think for the football players who start to get married and start to have kids, their season is starting when school is starting. So their family almost has to really give this place a chance. And I think most people feel like if you give this town a chance, and Tim McGee talks about this all the time, that you're going to find, case in point, that your wife's probably going to like it here and your kids are going to like it here and you're going to like it here.
I cannot tell you guys how much traveling I've done lately, right? Going to Los Angeles, staying at a beachfront, right? Acting like Mr. Big Shot. And you guys understand I'm doing a lot of tongue-in-cheek when I do that stuff. But there's some pretty nice places, Tom. You know what I look forward to? Coming back to Cincinnati. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but yes, I love Cincinnati because it's easy. It's so easy. It's inexpensive. I'm not reaching into my pocket. I don't know how people in California, we always talk about California, I don't know how you get ahead. It's an easy place. I think it's a safe place. I mean, do you know what it's like, Tom, to sit on my balcony, look over the city at the Ham and Eggers, have my Grey Goose and bubbly? I mean, it's a pretty good lifestyle. And even my wife, and she didn't want to, she was in California for 2 weeks with her sister building that monstrosity. I'll have to show you pictures here in a month. But she was happy to get back to Cincinnati because it is such a nice place, and it's a nice place. My kid lives 2 blocks over from me. I see my kid 4 to 5 times a week. If you're living in California, you can't have that situation.
No, you can't. You can't. And people don't, you're looking at unless you've been out there and spent any time there, you don't understand what that's like. I used to say all the time, my sister's raised most of her kids in the suburbs in Chicago. And I mean, you know, her kids were basketball players. My kids were athletes. Your kids were athletes. You know, when they would go play a baseball game in the summer, case in point to what you said a minute ago, Dodger Stadium, Pacific Palisades. You know, the ballpark might be 8 miles down the road, but it takes her 50 minutes to get there. Here in Cincinnati, my kids are playing in a lacrosse game 8 miles down the road. It takes me 9 minutes to get there.
Well, here's the thing in California, and again, we're talking about California. People can get the visual. I'm looking at my clock going, I got to get out of here. It's 1:30. I can't, if I wait another half hour, I'm going to be stuck in traffic. Do I want to spend my life, and I could live anywhere in the country I want, anywhere, but I choose Cincinnati. But do you want to sit there in traffic an hour each way? And that happens for a lot of people every single day. What about health? You know, I'm always talking about health. Is that healthy for you to spend time in traffic, 6 lanes going both ways? It's just miserable. When I was a kid, it was a great place. Now it's a miserable place to live.
Paul Fritzner, Tracy, Paul and I are the only 2. Now, Brandon Seho came back today, but Trace, Casey, Sean, Reed, all those guys left to go to Kansas City for the game. And then they decided, you know what? The University of Kansas is about, 30-minute ride down the road, right across the border. We're going to stick around Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. Tonight, go to the Kansas State-Kansas game. Then come back sometime tomorrow. They said to us, hey, Paul, Tom, go get them.
Yeah, well, they're living the life of Riley. It must be nice, but this is the generation we have. Live for today. You know what, boys? It will rain. And because you guys keep spending, I bet you got nothing in the bank. And first of all, how dare Casey miss the show because it's snowing? We had a guy, Seg Dennison at WLW, that didn't drive in the snow. And that's exactly, people don't know this, it's a little secret. Casey will not drive in the snow, so he stayed home today. Is that right, Tom?
No, he's in Lawrence, Kansas. They hung out going to the Bengals game Sunday. Now, Seho made the trip back. He's here with us. So the Ham and Eggers are represented today by your good your good friend Paul Fritzner and Brandon Seho. Fellas, anything you'd like to talk to Tracy about?
Well, no, it's just good. It's great to see you. It's great to see you, Casey. It's great to be here.
You just called him Casey.
Well, I got this delay in. I got to take these headphones off. I got this delay in my ear. I can't even hear myself think. Tracy, it's great to see you.
I have a question for you. Yeah, I have a question for you boys. Since you made all the playoff games, Buffalo, Kansas City, so I guess you'll be heading to the Super Bowl, probably be on the 50-yard line. Hey, I've got a 6-star hotel if you guys want to stay there in Arizona that I can recommend. You guys need any help?
What is it?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, what is the name of that hotel? Because I've lived in Arizona, as you know, for about 14 years. What hotel might that be?
Thom, that's a secret.
Are you kidding me?
That's a secret. I can't be telling it. If you guys want to go, maybe I'll make some moves. Hey, the Kentucky Derby's coming up in May. Maybe you guys can sit in a suite with Bob Baffert. Do something like that. I mean,
he's banned. He's banned right now, right?
Yeah, I think he's banned for a while. I'm pretty sure that's right.
I think the Kentucky Derby tickets go on sale tomorrow. I was looking at
Tracy. Why don't you get us a suite for the old Chatterbox crew?
You know what? I'm actually some people from California. We're going to make a trip. That this isn't my idea because I can't stand people, but we're going to go down, and I think we're going to go to the infield. And I hear that's a little rowdy. Right? Flashing. Is that what happens, Thom? You know
I've done the infield twice. It's a riot.
You're going to have some Milwaukee's best in you, and there's no Grey Goose in the infield.
Tracy's not. No, Tracer. There's no way. There's no way that you are going in the infield of the Kentucky Derby. The only other infield I would say that would be a bigger stretch than that would be the Indy 500 infield. You're not going in there.
I'm going to try to suck it up. We've got 8 people coming, 6 from California, 3 other couples, and they really want to go to the Kentucky Derby. Danae's taking care of all the arrangements. It's just going to be a miserable time. It's just going to be a horrible time.
Have you ever been, Tracy, your kind of crowd is more Keeneland. Have you been to Keeneland before when they run?
I think my kind of crowd is more Del Mar down there. or Los Alamitos. Los Alamitos, something like that. But yeah, I just, I thought of you guys. I thought of the Ham and Eggers in Kansas City with all the people, and I thought, 0 degrees, right, with the wind chill. What a miserable place. I mean, who would want to watch a football game and be that cold?
Right. Brandon just did it. He was there.
I was in Buffalo, too. It was electric. The ending wasn't, but I mean, I can't block for Joe Burrow, so that's not. What?
Yeah.
I had a question.
No, let me tell you something.
Okay,
let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I did. I had a 75-inch. I have a 75-inch TV, 5D.
Just one?
And it is just really, really nice. I can zero in on things. Do you know Joe Burrow has a mole on his butt? You don't even notice that, but my TV just blows up and you can see the stuff that other people can't see. Sitting there watching the game on my 75-inch TV, having sushi and vodka tonics. Nothing better than that.
Brandon?
I mean, I'd rather be out in the elements among the people, but we're two different types of people. It seems like, Tracy.
Let's do this too with the show. I don't know if we're going to take calls. Thom, you were great yesterday on WLW. Use WLW as your sandbox. Work on taking calls. See how that goes. But I think we need to branch out and talk about other things. And when you talk about other things, you have a Renaissance man. You have a Dr. Phil, a Stephen Hawking, a Warren Buffett, Andrew Tate, Jordan Stevenson. That's what you have in Tracy Jones. So we can talk about other things than sports. We can branch out. And I know, Thom, you like your politics, don't you?
I do, Tracer. I like to read about it. I at least like to read about it. I have way too many skeletons in the closet, so I myself could never go partake in running for an office. But I like reading about it. Right?
I think you would be. I think you would be great at politics because.
Well, Rob Portman was my neighbor he still is my neighbor. He has been my neighbor for a long, long time. I have incredible respect for Rob Portman. There are things I disagreed with that he did there near the end, and every now and again I'll talk to him about it. Rarely. I think the guy cared very much about what was going on in our country, and I think there are a lot of people out there that care about this country. And it's just the avenue of figuring out what's the best way to get there.
Well, I think sending $120 billion to Ukraine is not really worrying about this country. Why don't we worry about our border? Why don't we do that? Why don't we worry about making our cities safe? I mean, I won't go downtown. I like the city. I like Kentucky side, but I will not participate in that tomfoolery stuff downtown Cincinnati.
I hear they got some happening joints down there, Tracer. You know,
downtown is great,
I got to tell you, my wife
fun.
was down there with a bunch of girls this weekend. They had a surprise birthday party for my wife, and they went down to some joints. They went down one of the places where Zach Taylor gave the game ball.
Blind Pig?
Blind Pig. They went down to some place called Tokyo Kitty. Is that it?
Oh, karaoke.
Man,
Yeah.
karaoke.
Right?
Great
They went
spot.
down to,
Nerds.
The
look,
BA?
I love going and hitting some joints just like anybody. I don't think they went there. I'm quite sure that wasn't on the itinerary. But Tracer, there's some great joints down there.
Yeah, but I like the Kentucky side. It's really safe. I mean, you start off with the Bellevue Vets and just kind of move it going west or whatever that direction is. I won't venture on across that bridge. I just won't do it.
All right.
I got to keep it safe.
Do you have something to add, Brandon?
Well, I just had a question. You wanted to combine sports and politics, or sports and other topics. Yes. So what's a better chance of happening? Cincinnati's mayor getting reelected, or the Reds winning a postseason series in the next 5 years?
Man, Reds got an uphill battle, don't they, Tom? I mean, a real uphill battle. And that mayor needs to know.
Tracer, listen, help me here. Help me here. First answer Brandon's question, and then I'm going to follow up with something before I let you go.
I think the Reds have a better chance in the next 5 years. 5 years is a long time. You can get some, by finishing last place, you can get some good draft hits.
Oh, okay. You think the Reds have a better chance than he does in a major urban city getting reelected with a D next to his name? You think the Reds have a better chance to win the World Series than he does?
No, playoff series, a playoff series.
Oh, playoff series.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not a big fan of the mayor. I mean, he's more of a FC Cincinnati type fan than a baseball football guy. If you know what I mean.
That's probably fair. That's probably fair.
Yeah.
All right. So, but here's a question, Tracer, I threw out to the audience, and you came back and you had a suggestion about taking phone calls, which I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing we can do around here, because then we can talk to people about what they want to talk about, not just what we want to talk about, right? Whatever it is. You talk about grooming habits. Hell, I don't care. Right. But Tracer, I mean, do you think that there are people that are going to be tuned into this program, and we're trying to grow our audience? And you're a baseball guy, so maybe you're not the right guy to ask, but you're able to take 2 steps back and look at things, big picture. I mean, are we supposed to come in here every day when the Reds start out 2-17 and talk about their games every day?
Tom, I'll tell you what, and I really like Chatterbox, and I like the setup. I like all the ham and egger guys, and you've got a good product there. But if you think you're going to break down the Cincinnati Reds and have a successful show, you're mistaken. I think you got to branch off. You know, when I did extra innings, my thing was I never talked about baseball. I mean, things that are important, the FQI. Is there anything more important than the fan quality index? Or this. How about this idea? People should sit and watch the game according to zip code. Now, I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable sitting with people from Indian Hill or Bellevue than someone from Norwood or East Price Hill or Terrace Park.
That's a topic we're going to have to get into next on Thursday. We're going to get into that idea. Because
there's a lot of
Tracy, you're the one that brought it up already. They already have something like that where they could take it to the next level with this ticket fencing kind of thing, right? Of being able to get a ticket if you're for out of town. Yes. You brought that up before.
Right. That up. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of truth to it. You want to be with people that you feel comfortable with, right? I wouldn't feel like if I went to the Reds game at Riverfront, I wouldn't want to be sitting with people in the Red seats, right? We have nothing in common. What do we have in common? Nothing.
Tracy, actually, I got a question for you. Tracy. This is a serious question.
Go ahead. Okay.
A serious question on this topic.
I don't like serious questions. Go ahead.
I have never sat in the diamond seats at Great American Ballpark. I've been talking about it for a long time.
Oh, this is a perfect year to do it.
I've been talking about it for a long time, and I've been waiting until I could buy a seat for like maybe $150, something like that. I don't know. I know some people that have seats down there, but they're always taken or they're corporate or whatever. What are the chances that you and me and maybe a couple other of these Chatterbox guys can end up in a diamond seats at a Reds game this year?
0 chance. Listen, you poor bastards. Save your money. Quit traveling around the country spending money. It's called saving, right? And you might be able, I think the regular price, Tom, is $275. I think you could probably get a diamond seat for $125. But, Paulie, you've got to save your money. There's an interesting concept, right? Save for what you want later on, a goal, instead of just, spending recklessly, traveling the country, going to strip bars and watching sports.
But see, Tracy, in summation, his debt ceiling just changed. So now he's talking about diamond club seats.
Yeah.
All right, Tracer.
Just put it on your credit card.
That's exactly right. Run it up. Run it up. Debt ceiling. Tracer, have a good day, my man.
All right, boys. I'll see you on Thursday.
Tracy Jones, he'll be back with us Thursday. Best 30 minutes of television right here twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11:30. Do we have a cherry on top today?
We do. All right, so I'm gonna try and play this here.
Presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Hold on,
Here we go.
Let's do it. All right, so this comes to us courtesy of the Eagles.
The band?
Not the band.
Oh, no, that's the real Eagles. But go ahead. You're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles?
The Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to see if I can't play this. This is Nick Sirianni with his kids.
Nice.
In the post-game press conference.
Love this.
Each game's a little bit different, but it was great to set the tone there and get the lead, right? And get the lead and put them behind. Taylor, stop it. Taylor, stop.
Why did he tell her to stop it?
I don't know.
I mean, she was basically saying blah, 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 right? Is that the impression you got?
Yeah, we've heard this one before,
Yeah,
Dad.
we've
Come
heard
on.
this one before. That's great stuff. I love when the kids get up there like that. It's so much fun. It makes these guys real human beings. I mean, it does. It personalizes them to the fan base, most of which will never meet the guy or certainly see him in a familial situation. So good for him.
Do you remember Steph Curry's daughter from like 7-8 years? She's grown up now.
Yeah.
They showed a picture of her at a game. Like they showed her, with her mom with Aisha at a game. She's huge now. Time flies, and she was doing the same thing with Steph like 8 years ago.
Yep. I mean, it's so good when these guys have a chance to do that, and I would highly recommend that any of them, when they could be a Red after some random game in July, a post-game press conference, they have a good game, kid and wife is waiting in the hallway for him outside the clubhouse after the game, which they do. Bring the kid up there with them. Do the press conference. People like you more. All right, boys, we survived another day.
We did it, Tom.
Is it us three tomorrow?
Now, see, in summation, the thing that concerns me here is, okay, you look at our chat today. We're talking about Tracy with a lot of different things, right? Hometown discounts. We're talking with Tracy about all kinds of different things.
Politics.
It stayed in totally on the Bengals, the chat.
Well,
everybody going back and forth about the Bengals.
It's not even 48 hours post-mortem. Body's still warm.
Okay. Paul, thank you. Great job. Brandon, thank you. Welcome back. Great job. We'll see you here tomorrow, 10 a, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.